Good weekend, ladies and gentlemen. Listen, I'm just this weekend, I don't know why, I just feel kind of lazy. Just hanging around the house mostly, doing a few little small jobs, around the yard, little things. Took a walk a couple times, tried to stretch my legs, and it snowed. There's a lot of snow here. There's maybe 4 inches of snow came down last night. It's really cold outside, so I put my jacket on, I go for a walk. I'm just taking some chill time, some downtime to relax and gather my thoughts, and I figured I'd come on and talk to you guys about a subject that's on my mind. All the way through world history, first, back in the times of the caveman, but it wasn't really caveman, and they developed the first society, the first world empire that existed. It was called the Sumerian Empire. And it had all the things that we have in our in the world today. It had judicial courts, it had libraries, they had all these things. Like, it was amazing. It was a very advanced civilization that developed, and kingship developed. There was kings, and it was the reign of kings, and we went through that period for thousands of years because the Sumerian civilization fell. And when it fell, 3 civilizations sprang up from the Sumerian civilization. And those civilizations were the Egyptian, the Babylonian, and the Assyrian world empires. And they had kings too. And they each had their own set of gods that they worshipped. Basically, they were the same set of gods that the Sumerian civilization had. They just renamed them, repackaged them. In the Egyptian civilization, the Assyrian and Babylonian civilizations. And so the world was run by kings for thousands of years, and monarchies. But slowly things advanced. And then came the age of governments. Well, we've been run by governments for a long time. The world has. But what's coming next is what I want to talk about. And it's an inevitable evolution of world rulership. It's inevitable. So I'm not going to be able to stop it. You guys aren't going to be able to stop it. It's coming. But there's choices that we can make. Now, I'm going to tell you why governments are going to slowly be phased out now. Just like kingships and rulerships were slowly phased out. Now, governments are going to be phased out. And the reason why is because why we're hitting the limit of it, and you can see it in the world today, what's happening. And what's going to be their demise. They're going to increasingly, governments, in order to maintain control, are going to have to increasingly pacify the population using modern monetary theory. They're going to have to increasingly give the population handouts in order to... You see what's happening in the world. People are becoming more and more dissatisfied. So the next level that we're moving into now is where the governments basically pacify the people with actually giving them money. This is going to work for a period of time, but what it's going to do is it's going to have an effect on our monetary systems worldwide, and it's going to increase the size of government exponentially, and it does come to a limit in the end, and this is the limiting factor on governments. Ultimately, they're going to come to their conclusion in a few more years down the road from now. Not right away. This is kind of a slow, drawn-out process. But it is going to come to a conclusion. And what's going to come in to replace it is blockchain technology, believe it or not, and computers. The next form of government we're going to have is going to be a computer. I know, you guys are all in shock, but this is what's coming. This transfer of power. First we had kings and monarchies, and then it phased out with governments, and now the government's going to be phased out by a computer. But this isn't right away. I'm talking in the future. I'm talking like maybe, I don't know, 10 years from now, or maybe 20 years from now. And increasingly, our computers are going to have more and more AI technology, artificial intelligence in the computers. And they're going to become our rulers, ultimately. But here's where we get to the choice. Is all got to do with the programming of the computer that rules us. This is the choice we have. Can we let corrupt men who sit at the top program the computer so that we are ruled as slaves to the computer? Is that what we want? Or when this time comes, say 10 years from now, when we're going to transfer over into a computerized government, when the time comes, maybe 20 years from now, are we going to let the men program the computer? Because if we do, these corrupt men program the computer then is going to act as a very similar. You've ever seen these movies, where they have slaves and stuff? Then you have the guy there with the whip. And you have another guy who's above him. Well, picture the computer will become the guy who is like the intermediary who controls the masses. And programmed by the evil guy at the top. Emperor Ming. Do you remember Flash Gordon? Ming the Merciless and Flash Gordon? This is the sort of thing I'm talking about, guys. That could be our future, but there could be an alternative. What if the people were to program the computer? Now, once the computer's programmed, it's going to follow that programming forever into the future. So the way I see it is this. When the time comes 20 years from now, when they finally build this big mainframe computer that's going to control the world, that's run on blockchain technology, and in that blockchain technology it has everything stored in it, using Ethereum type technology. It has everything stored in it. It has your Social Security, and it has your property, whatever properties you own, whoever you're married to, all stored in the blockchain on this computer, so it can access it immediately. So it knows who you are. And in this world 20 years from now, there'll be cameras everywhere. Can we say goodbye to crime? Nobody get away with anything. You jaywalk across the street. And through facial recognition technology, they've already taken the money out of your bank account for the fine. And your bank's on your telephone. That's going to change. It's probably going to be on some sort of an implant in the future, 20 years from now. And so if you do anything wrong, any little thing, the camera's going to have you. So, these crimes that people break and enter and stuff like that, all a thing of the past. Your wallet's going to be a thing of the past. You're not going to have to carry a wallet. You're not going to have to carry all these cards with your photo identification and everything. You're going to have all that. That's all going to be, and you're not going to be able to get around the system any which way. The system is going to be so airtight. This is the future we're moving into. Whether you guys like it or not, this is where we're going. You ever go through an airport or through through anything, a shopping mall or any place, and you're standing in these lines, and they have all these turnstiles set up, in the big long line. Whenever I'm standing in a line like that, I feel like I'm being processed, like it's people processing. I think of the movie 1984 or whatever, Visions of the Future, and we're already entering into it now. Next time you guys go to an airport and you're standing in line, you're going to start thinking about what I just said, and hey, you know what? We're being processed. Well, it's going to get worse, guys. And through computer technology, all these world computers, every computer on Earth is going to start to be linked into the mainframe, ultimately, 20 or 30 years from now. So, back to programming that mainframe computer. Instead of letting these guys who have, through history, kept us in a position, the programming of the computer is everything. It's essential. The computer needs to be programmed in a way that it has human rights as first priority. A non-amendable constitution programmed into the computer that human rights are first priority. This is what we need. We need a new constitution for the computer that runs the world, because this is where we're going. We're going to have one mainframe central computerized system that's going to run the entire planet. And if we don't want to have gulags, then human rights has to be the primary issue on the computer's mind, and it has to be a constitution written into the computer for human rights, and that constitution itself has to be non-amendable, so that these corrupt politicians and stuff, and these people out there who want to amend the Constitution to violate human rights, would not be able to. By no means. So that as, say, 20 years comes from now, we get this computer that runs the entire planet, and it's programmed to not violate human rights as first priority. You're going to get guys who are going to come in and want to amend that. They're going to want to set up gulags again, because this is what we've had all the way through human history. We've had these jerks. Quite seriously, we've had these jerks controlling us, and they are psychopaths. And this is the reason why we've had so much suffering through human history. I know an awful lot of people out there, especially people who grew up in my age, my way of thinking, are scared of computers. I'm nervous about computers, you know? Whether we're scared of computers or not, the world is wholeheartedly pushing into computer technology now. It's becoming a computerized world. You know, everybody you see is out there playing Pokemon Go or whatever, you know, and they got their face right down in that little screen. You know, little kids now, they can't go 2 hours without their cell phone. They're only 5 years old. It's a pacifier for them. We're moving headfirst into computer technology. We're not looking back. All of these things have been untested before, but we're putting so much reliance upon the internet, it's unbelievable. All of our money is online, everything. I hate to tell you if the internet goes down, but here's a problem. Here's the thing. What we need to do, too, in the world is we need to set the internet up into areas. Rather than having the whole World Wide Web connected all completely. In other words, completely connected, so that if it goes down, the whole thing goes down. We need to set it up into zones and have some sort of transfer modules, transfer the information between zones, but lock it out of another specific zone. So in other words, if someplace in the world we have a problem with the internet, I don't know what it could be, I can't possibly guess. But say we have some sort of a problem in the internet, then it can't that problem can't transfer itself from one zone to another because of these firewalls between the zones. This is what we need. We need to separate the internet. Instead of having one global internet, we need to have a partitioned internet with zones. You know? Because we're going into this technology, it's never been tested before, and we're putting all of our faith in it. Heck, you got a farmer, right, nowadays, you know? And what he'll do is he'll go out and he'll hook up the newest, latest milking machines on his farm. Say he's got 1,000 milking cows, you know, he'll hook up the newest, latest technology. And it's got solenoid valves and everything that pump the milk all into the containers and everything, and it's all connected to the internet. So he can pick up his cell phone. He can be 5,000 miles away. He looks at his cell phone, and he can see how much milk he's getting from each cow and so on. Oh, isn't this great, he says to his wife, and he pushes the buttons. He says, look how much money I made today. You know, all these cows milking and stuff. Well, you know, all those solenoid valves and everything else, the internet goes down. It has to be online to work. So they say the internet goes down. Now take the old technology we used to have. Heck, if you go back 100 years ago, they used to have to milk all the cows by hand. And they came up with milking machines. Oh, great, wonderful invention, But it wasn't connected to the internet. Well, you know what they've done now is they've taken all those old milking machines out, crunched them all up, and sent them to the scrapyard. The ones that won't connect to the internet, the old-fashioned milking machines where there's no internet connection. In the same way with all the cash registers out there, in every store you go to now. Just a few years ago, your cash registers weren't no internet connection, and they didn't even plug in. You had to pull a handle on them, and they went ka-ching, and the drawer would open up, and they'd use cash as cash register. That's why it's called a cash register, Then they took all those to the junkyard, smashed them all up for scrap, and they brought in the new ones that plug into the wall. Well, you could run them off of a generator, okay? But now they've brought in the newest ones that check inventory on all the different stores online, and so you got another plug on the thing. You got to plug it into an RJ45 jack on the internet, along with plugging it into the wall for it to work. And if it doesn't have the internet online, then it won't go to where it needs to go for it to function, for the drawer to open up or anything. So they scrap all the other ones they had, and now all they got these new ones. Well, say the internet goes down. They can't sell you any merchandise. Oh, I'm sorry, sir, but we can't scan that UPC code or whatever because the internet's not up and running. So we put all this stuff, even our stores, the way we build our stores. In the old days, you used to have windows all around the store. Power wasn't on. Guy could go in, the cash register wasn't even plugged into the power. He could sell you something and use cash. Now what we've done is we've stripped all that out. We built a store that there's no windows on it anywhere. It's just all walls. And it only works if you turn the power on, the lights all come on inside the store. You know what they'll do in the end? They'll make it so unless the internet's on, the lights won't turn on in the store. This is the way we're going. We're going all in hog without testing any of this. Now the problem with all of this is we don't have any redundant systems in place as backups in case something goes wrong. Oh, that's smart. I'm just sitting here thinking, what are they trying to do to all of us? So, and then they got an internet that's all worldwide interconnected. So, what do you got out there right now? You've got, quite literally, thousands of hackers out there. These nerdy guys with the big round rimmed glasses, or girls, and they're out there, and they're constantly on the keyboard going, right? You got them out there. Hackers. Working steady to try to do something. Anything they can do. But they're on the internet. They're crazies. That's what they are. They're a bunch of crazies. And we got a system that's vulnerable. We need to break it into sections. Zones. This is what we need to do. So this is in the future, 20 years from now. We need to have an internet that's broken into zones, and it has modules between each zone that transfer the information, kind of like we have borders. Basically, it'll work kind of like we have borders now, and the modules act like border guards. So that information is not getting in unless it runs through security scans. This is what we need on the internet, so that we can break it down into zones. We need to do the same thing with our power grids. We need to protect ourselves from disaster. Our world. We need to protect it from disaster, and we need to start moving in this direction now, not waiting until the disaster occurs. We need to start doing it now. Same thing with our fuel supplies, our gasoline and everything else. They got no redundant systems in place. They got no extra, tank out there that's full of oil ready to go, and it's already processed and everything for gasoline. If something goes wrong, well, we're not going to have any gas for our cars. because they got no redundant systems in place. All the way through the system, what we need to do is we need to stop the forward momentum. It's like a guy going down the highway in a car that has never been, say it's a car that's never been tested before. It's one of these new prototypes or whatever. Instead of keeping that accelerator to the floor all the way and not paying any attention to what he's doing, he needs to stop for a minute and he needs to check the car over and make sure everything's working properly or whatever, you know. And that's the way with our system now. We need to stop for a minute, stop this forward momentum and going so fast, moving, trying to get all these new systems in. We need to stop for a minute and we need to examine the system we have now and we need to say, hey, you know what? What happens if we have a problem here? It's like the transformers across the United States. We've got a sun up there right now that produces X-class solar flares every once in a while. It's like a hiccup. The sun hicks up. Hiccup! Boop! And it pops out this giant gamma ray radiation heading out into space. You know, it's kind of like, and that goes flying, oftentimes it'll go flying past the Earth and miss the Earth most times, because the Earth's kind of a small target floating around. But every so often it hits the Earth. Wham! And the side that it hits, facing the sun, when that hits, it can be tremendous. Now, a lot of people don't know about this, but going back into the 1800s, we had a really hard one hit us, and it hit us right head on. Bam! Doesn't happen very often. Probably only happens about once every 100 years or something, you know. Hits the Earth directly. And they know what it did. It was called the Carrington event. They know exactly what it did. They know exactly where it hit. And how they know is the telegraph lines. Back in those days, people used to send messages across telegraph lines. It fried all the telegraph lines. Just boiled them. Now, if we had an event hit like that today, I cannot begin to tell you how much trouble we would be in. And this is why we need to zone the internet. Because if we effectively zoned the internet off, and if we got a Carrington event, what would actually happen is the damage done to the internet would be limited to that zone, and the people that live in the other zones would still be up and running and able to come in with support. And what about the giant transformers? We need to put a few extra giant transformers away to the side, you know, have them in a warehouse someplace, already built, brand new ones, ready to go, and just have them there for the electrical grid in case we get a Carrington type event. Make a steel warehouse to put them in, and put shielding on the side to shield them so that if we do get a Carrington event, it won't fry them while they're in the warehouse. Gotta think of things like this ahead of time, guys. You know, not when after the disaster occurs and then you don't have any preparations in place. Now, getting down on a personal level, we need to do the same thing for ourselves. This is why I tell you guys, put away $5 bills for yourself. Have a nice little stack of them. That'll cover cash emergencies. Why $5 bills? Is because they might not be able to make change for you. And you can round it off to the closest 5. You don't want to go waltzing in there with a $1,500 gold coin. Have you ever watched the Mark Dice videos where he's trying to give away a $1,500 gold coin for like 25 or 50 bucks or something? And you can't give it away? You want to have recognizable, something's recognizable. $5 bills are very recognizable. So we need to think of these things ahead of time. Do you have toilet paper? Now, I've recommended to you guys to take a closet in your house, clean it out, because you probably got a closet like that there now. It's probably all full of junk. You open up the door and all the junk comes spilling out. You know the closet I'm talking about. Clean it out. Get some bottled water in there. Get an emergency kit, Band-Aids and stuff like that. Get yourself a few other things. A bottle of whiskey might not be a bad idea. You know? I mean, it's great stuff for cleaning wounds. It's great stuff for calming your nerves when the disaster occurs. A few things like that. You have a few things put away for yourself that you might really need. Some cans of beans, maybe a bag of oatmeal, oatmeal's great stuff in a disaster, by the way, guys. I found that out, and some brown sugar. You can't beat hot oatmeal to make you feel better. You boil up a little bit of hot oatmeal. Okay, it doesn't taste the best in the world. Put some brown sugar on it and a little bit of canned milk. And after you eat that, you feel all warm and cozy. And then have yourself a little sip of some whatever. And you're all warm and cozy, and the rest of the world's falling down around you. You know what I mean? This is the new world we're entering into. And you gotta learn to live in this kind of maybe live through some sort of a scenario. What you'll see is if you see some sort of system go down in a certain area, you're gonna see the first thing they're gonna run into. You'll go in to get some bottled water in the grocery store, and that'll be the first shelf that's gone. Guys, no kidding. They'll be in there ahead of you, and they'll be piling the wagons full and fighting over one. Scrambling and pushing through, and pushy people, have it all ahead of you. You won't have it. You have to go dry. So you want to clean out that closet. You want to have some bottled water in there. So you don't have to run to the grocery store and fight through that mob. Anyway, listen, we're living in turbulent times, guys. One of the biggest dangers out there is the financial system right now has become unstable. And the wheels are coming off of it. I don't know exactly how all that's going to play out, but I'll give you an example of what I'm thinking is going to happen in my mind. Picture the world's financial system and the world in general as a building, a construction building. Now picture it in your mind right now. Nice building, say it's 50 stories high, and it's got office space in there, and all the people are sitting in there, and they got a nice carpets on the floor and everything, and nice music, elevator music playing in there, and they're all tapping on their keyboards and everything else. And the guy comes in and he says, "We sold this building to a demolition company that morning." He says, "You guys all have to go home now." So the first people to leave, they all head down out the building, out the escalator, and out the building, and all the building's empty. And then these working crews come in. And they start tearing up the carpets. They start ripping up the computer desks and everything, and transferring all that out for sale. So inside of 2 or 3 days, you go inside the building, it doesn't look like the same building. There's no carpets on the floors. All the computers are gone. Everything's gone. And then you get the next crew comes in. And they start smashing out the windows, knocking the windows down to the ground, and they start gutting the floors and ripping off the wall panels and everything else. And they keep tearing at this building until all that's left is the big steel frame and concrete girders. And the air is blowing through the place, And there's just, because there's no windows in it anymore and everything, and it's all just gutted. And then another crew comes in, and they start ripping away at the columns even, getting it ready to bring the thing down. This is what's happening to our system. We're in the initial phases now where they're telling the people, okay, you got to leave now. You got to leave now. And this is the working class people are losing their jobs and stuff like that, and they can't make ends meet. Their paycheck doesn't make it to the end of the month. This is what's happening right now. This is the first stage. Now the next stage will come, where the next crew comes in, and they tear out all the carpets and everything else. That's what's going to come next. They're stripping this building down. And the way I see it happening is, in the end, all that'll be left is the big steel girders and columns. That's the government itself. That's your essential services, like police and fire service and the power grid and everything else. That's what'll be left in the end. And most people will have lost their jobs, and the government then will be omnipotent, because they'll be the only ones handing out paychecks. And we'll be on full monetary theory, full modern monetary theory where nobody works anymore. Everybody just collects the benefits. Well, the world can't run on a system like that, but still the structure will still be there. In other words, even though the system has basically come to a grinding halt, there will still be a governmental structure there. The power will still be on if you can afford to pay for it. So, if you guys got silver, you'll still have power. You'll still be able to stay inside your house. You know, where a lot of people are going to be on the street. This is why homelessness is going to increase so much, exponentially. And everything will stay basically running. The government, the structure of the government and everything will stay running right up until they have to do a reset. This is what's coming in the end. We're going to go through a hyperinflation, and then at the end of the hyperinflation, we're going to go through a reset. And this is going to get pretty hairy. It's probably going to be at least as bad as the Great Depression. There's going to be just that much poverty out there. Poverty is going to increase like nothing you guys have ever seen before or will ever witness again. Then they're going to do a reset, and they're going to be forced to go back to something that has value behind it to back the currencies with. And the currencies are most likely going to be digital. And, you know, the cryptocurrencies, gold and silver, are going to feed off of this. And their value is going to go unlimitedly high. Because, particularly gold and silver, because that's after the reset, that's what they're going to have to use to back the currencies with. But they're going to have to reprice it. And its value is going to go back to what it was historically. Okay? And what I mean by that is all the way through history, we know what the set value for silver was. Its value is already set, and it's going to go back to that. It's going to go exactly back to that. And I'm going to tell you guys what it is. They used to pay them in denarii, which was the Roman silver, for a day's work. And by the way, a day's work back then was not 8 hours. It was 12 hours, steady, hard manual labor. So 12 hours worth of work for 1/10 of an ounce of silver. And it's going to go back to that. So we're not going to measure it in dollars anymore. Forget that. That's gone. We're going to measure it in man hours. What is an ounce of silver worth in man hours? It's worth 120 man hours for an ounce of silver. And it's going to go back to that. So, you can figure how much your silver's worth if you've got a 20-ounce tube of silver. Each one of those coins is going to be worth 120 man hours. Each coin. So, that'll be what? Figuring right, 2,400 man hours for your tube of silver. That's what it's going to be worth in the end. See if you're hanging on to gold and silver. When they reprice everything, it doesn't matter what they do. This is the value things are going to go back to. They're going to, and things are not going to be measured in dollars anymore. They're going to be measured in your time. 120 man hours per ounce of silver. And gold is going to be 10 times that. So an ounce of gold is going to be 1,200 man hours. That's what an ounce of gold is going to be worth. Forget measuring it in dollars, because the dollar is going to be gone. History. And all this is going to happen rather quickly, because we're reaching the conclusion now. And government's next step, to stay government, their next step is to pacify the people with social programs. Massive social programs. It's only going to stimulate the hyperinflation quicker, ultimately to a conclusion, which is going to be a reset. We're in for some hefty stuff coming up. You need to prepare for it so that you don't go hungry and your family doesn't go hungry during it. And this means if you don't hold it in your hand, you don't own it. Possession is 9 points of the law. So if you've got your tight little fist wrapped around it, it's yours. But if it's a stock portfolio, if it's your bank account, and nowadays, you don't even get to kick a bank. In the old days, I remember when they used to let you have a little bank book, and you used to take it home, and the teller used to write in it how much you got inside it next to the number. At least you had something on paper. Nowadays, you go home and give you a little slip of paper, maybe, but what is that? Toilet paper? By the way, your money you got in the bank is just digits on a screen. It's about as real as World of Warcraft money. Listen, I've ranted a little bit this afternoon. Thank you guys for listening. Give me a thumbs up, and we'll catch you guys in the next show. Bye-bye.